The following presentation is a general rules briefing for USA Triathlon sanctioned races. It is not intended to replace any in-person or otherwise race-specific briefings. Neither is it a replacement for any mandatory race briefings, as failure to attend a mandatory briefing may result in penalty. Check with the head official for your event if you have any doubts, questions, or concerns. These rules are applicable over the entire course. The appropriate treatment of others includes competitors, officials, volunteers, and spectators. Competitors must always practice good sports conduct, be responsible for their own safety, the safety of their own equipment, and be considerate of the safety of others. Be responsible for understanding and following the multisport competition rules and race management requirements. Treat all others with respect and courtesy. For more information on race conduct, please view the briefing at www.usatriathlon.org/multisport/rules. Competitors must not use abusive language, not wear, use, or carry items deemed to be a hazard to self or others. Hard casts, glass metal containers, personal audio devices, including bone conductive headphones, two-way radios, or anything of this nature. Not use any unauthorized equipment as defined in the USA Triathlon Multisport competition rules. And be responsible for keeping on the designated course, and if leaving the course for any reason, they must re-enter at the point the competitor exited the course. Competitors must not obstruct or interfere with the forward progress or jeopardize the safety and welfare of another competitor, race official, spectator, or member of the public. Not accept assistance from anyone other than an authorized technical official or member of the race staff or volunteers. Competitors must not leave equipment or discarded articles of equipment anywhere on the course, except in the approved locations. And they must withdraw immediately from the event if deemed by the event medical personnel that they present to the health or welfare of either him or herself or another person. Competitors must not offend community standards through deliberate acts of nudity, which might be seen or noticed in public. They must report to the penalty area to serve a time penalty for a rule violation after being issued with a blue or yellow card and instructed to do so by a technical official. Competitors at USA Triathlon National Championships must wear a shirt, jersey, or sports top, sports bra at all times during the bike and run segments. Failure to do so may result in disqualification. Failure to comply with any of the general or race conduct rules will result in the competitor receiving one of the forms of penalties described. It is not mandatory for an official to indicate that a rule violation will be reported or give a warning prior to issuing a penalty or reporting a rule violation in some situations. However, it is a best practice in most cases where a warning may be safely issued. A competitor may complete the event except where instructed to withdraw by a medical officer. It's important to emphasize that as a rule, USAT officials attempt to be proactive where possible in the enforcement and instruction around the competition rules. Athletes will be notified as soon as possible and safe to do so if they have received a penalty. Bike course penalties will be served in a designated penalty area. In some cases, and at most national championships, this will be a penalty tent. All other penalties will be served on the course as stand downs. While in the penalty area, athletes may consume only those items they have on their person or with their bikes. Public urination or nudity of any kind will result in disqualification. If an athlete must relieve themselves, the timing device will be stopped and the athlete allowed to go to a suitable facility to do so before returning to serve the remainder of their penalty time. USA Triathlon uses the international card system for issuing penalties. Blue and yellow card penalties result in variable time penalties to be served on the course as required. The time of the penalty varies depending on the distance of the race. For sprint and Olympic distance races, age group athletes accumulating 2 or more blue cards for drafting will be disqualified. For middle and long distance races, athletes accumulating 3 or more blue cards will be disqualified. Athletes who fail to stop as required prior to crossing the finish line are also subject to disqualification. Athletes penalized on the course must stop on the course as required. Every effort will be made to notify all athletes subject to possible disqualification on site and prior to awards. Athletes facing disqualification will have a full opportunity to discuss the circumstances with the head referee for the event prior to a final determination of the penalty. Please review this chart for a complete understanding of the penalty procedures and location of penalty service. Athletes must complete the entire course as prescribed, including all segments in the correct segment order as prescribed by race management. Any failure to so complete the entire course shall be deemed to constitute an unfair time advantage, regardless of overall timing data for the individual athlete, and may result in disqualification. Athletes who depart from the course must re enter at the point of departure before continuing. Athletes who cross the finish line prior to completing all segments of the course, who can safely re enter the course at their point of departure in the judgment of the head official and in concurrence with the lead timer, may be allowed to complete the course as prescribed. Failure to complete the entire course, as stated in this section at USA Triathlon events, may result in disqualification or the assignment of DNF in the race results at the discretion of the head official for the event. This illustration is a recommendation for the placement of body markings for many events. In some cases, such as, but not limited to, draft legal, elite, and developmental races, this illustration shows the required placement of body markings. Check with the head official for your event if you have any doubts, questions, or concerns. A competitor must mount and dismount the bicycle at the respective designated mounting and dismounting zones. A competitor must at all times rack his or her own bicycle only at their designated bicycle rack location and leave it in a stable position. Depending on the level of the competition, the mount and dismount line may be rigorously enforced, with athletes in violation penalized for their infraction. Check with the head official for your event if you have any doubts, questions, or concerns. In transition, a competitor must at all times place all their equipment at their designated bicycle rack location. A competitor must not interfere with another competitor's equipment, but where accidental interference occurs, the offending competitor must replace the equipment to its former position and state. Due to swimwear products entering and leaving the market over time, it is no longer feasible to have a predetermined approved list. The information provided on the USAT website is meant to help the athlete determine if the swimwear in question would be legal for use at USA Triathlon sanctioned events, and to provide them with the appropriate contact information point if they need further assistance. There are 3 categories of triathlon apparel: wetsuits, swimskins, and tri-suits/kits, including standard cycling apparel. Wetsuits are made with a non-permeable material, usually neoprene. This material provides buoyancy and is only legal in wetsuit legal swims or wetsuit optional waves. Wetsuit legal water temperatures are variable depending on the hosting party. They are allowed a maximum thickness of 5 millimeters. Swim skins/skin suits are made of 100% permeable synthetic textiles designed to smooth the swimmer's in-water profile and reduce drag. They contain no neoprene and do not provide buoyancy. They are legal for use in either wetsuit or non-wetsuit legal swims at USAT sanctioned events, unless the swim is wetsuit mandatory, in which they cannot be worn in place of a wetsuit. For sun protection or for religious reasons, a competitor may wear a one-piece or two-piece suit. The suit may cover the shoulders and arms, but not extend above the neck or past the wrist or ankle, except for a suit worn for religious reasons when it may cover the head or hair. The face may not be covered. The top section of a two-piece suit must not extend above the neck. When the use of wetsuits is forbidden, clothing covering the arms below the elbow and covering any part of the legs below the knees is also forbidden. The body of the race suit must be comprised of 100% textile materials such as nylon or lycra, but must not include rubberized materials such as polyurethane or neoprene. A competitor may use any stroke for propulsion through the water, tread water, or float. A competitor may stand on the bottom or rest by holding an inanimate object. In an emergency, the competitor should raise an arm overhead and call for assistance. Once assistance is rendered in an emergency, the competitor must retire from the competition. A competitor must wear the swim cap if provided. Any artificial propulsion device is prohibited. Any wetsuit with a thickness greater than 5 millimeters is prohibited. Competitors must swim in a manner that does not endanger themselves or others. For aquathlons or other multi-swim events, the wearing of the swim cap, if provided, is compulsory for the first swim leg and optional in subsequent swim legs. When wetsuits are allowed, all components of the wetsuit will fit to the athlete's body tightly. When mandatory, the wetsuit must cover at least the torso and back. When the use of wetsuits is forbidden, unless otherwise specified, clothing covering the arms below the elbow and covering any part of the legs below the knees is also forbidden during the swim. Let's review a few things about cycling conduct. Stay in coned lanes. Do not litter or discard gear along the course. Always ride in a safe manner, being careful not to create a danger to yourself or others. Obey all traffic laws unless otherwise directed by police or course monitors. Do not use or carry any sort of personal audio device. Cell phones are allowed for use as a cycling computer or tracking device as long as they are not used in a distractive manner. No headphones are allowed on the course. A competitor must obey traffic rules unless otherwise directed by a race official. A competitor is not permitted to make any forward progress without the bicycle and all of its component parts. Bike helmets are compulsory and must be approved by a national testing authority recognized by a national federation that is an affiliate of World Triathlon. Any alteration or addition, omission to any part of the helmet is prohibited. The bicycle helmet must remain securely fastened on the head of a competitor at all times once the bicycle is removed from the bicycle rack, while on the bicycle course, and until the bicycle is replaced on the bicycle rack. A competitor must clearly display the race identification numbers at all times if provided by the race director. Those not complying may incur a stop-start penalty. A competitor observed on the bike course with a bicycle helmet not judged to be securely fastened will receive a helmet violation and be required to serve either an on-course stop-start penalty with a technical official or proceed to a penalty area and serve a stop-start penalty with a technical official. The following applies to the bike segment of non-draft legal age group races. For the sprint and standard distance races, the bicycle draft zone is 10 meters long, extending backwards from the leading edge of the front wheel. This equals approximately 5 bike lengths of clear space between bikes. A maximum of 20 seconds will be allowed to pass through the zone of another athlete. The bicycle draft zone for any middle distance race or long distance race is 12 meters long. This equals 6 bike lengths of clear space. Upon entering the draft zone of another cyclist, a maximum of 25 seconds will be allowed to pass through the zone of another athlete and complete the pass. Age group athletes often move left well before they approach or enter the draft zone of the leading cyclist. Athletes must ride to the right and only move left in order to complete a pass. The athlete riding in bike 2 in this illustration is out of position and in danger of incurring a blocking penalty, which would be a yellow card penalty. Here, the athlete on bike 2 has entered the draft zone of bike 1 and must complete the pass in 20 seconds in sprint and standard distance races and 25 seconds in middle or long distance races. There is only one exit once an athlete enters the draft zone of the cyclist in front, and that is out the front. Athletes who enter the draft zone and are observed backing out of the zone are subject to a blue card drafting penalty. In this illustration, the gap is closed, there's no clear space, 15 seconds have expired. The athlete riding bike number 2 has now completed the pass within the allotted amount of time, and now the athlete riding bike number 1 has lost the right of way and must completely exit the draft zone to the rear before attempting a repass. An athlete who is observed failing to drop all the way out of the draft zone before repassing may receive either a blue or yellow card penalty. Athletes observed being passed who fail to yield the right of way to the passing cyclist and immediately repass the overtaking cyclist are subject to a blue card drafting penalty. The vehicle draft zones for a motorcycle are 15 meters and for all other vehicles, 35 meters. Side-to-side riding, once the trailing athlete enters the length of the leading cyclist draft zone, is prohibited in non-draft legal racing and may result in a drafting penalty. Once again, athletes who ride left when there is room to ride right without having entered the draft zone of the leading athlete may incur a blocking penalty. In age group draft legal racing, please note the following key points. Time trial bikes and bikes with aero bars are not allowed in draft legal races. Helmets that cover the ears are not allowed in draft legal races. Depending on the format or event standard, draft legal uniform requirements may be relaxed. Check with the head official for your event if you have any doubts, questions, or concerns. Athletes must not intentionally block another athlete attempting to complete a pass in a draft legal race. Athletes may pass on either the left or the right. For athletes participating in age group draft legal racing, it is best to ride right and pass left. However, athletes may pass on the left or the right, but should exercise caution and be vocal when attempting a pass to make their intentions clear. During the run segment, no outside assistance, such as pacing by a non-participant, personal audio devices, including Bode conducting headphones, or receiving aid from someone other than staff is allowed. A competitor may not crawl. A competitor must clearly display the race identification number on their front at all times on the run course, if provided by the race director. Those not complying may incur a stop-start penalty. For further information or questions, please contact rules and officials at usatriathlon.org.